The galaxy was vast, infinite, and teeming with life. Countless civilizations thrived among the stars, each carving out their own destiny. But all that changed when the Vrylith arrived. No one knew where they came from or how long they had been, watching. One day they simply appeared, massive ships descending like dark clouds over unsuspecting worlds. Their technology was beyond anything anyone had ever seen. Energy shields impenetrable by conventional weapons, weapons capable of obliterating entire cities in seconds. And then there was their psychic power, the ability to manipulate minds, turning enemies into obedient puppets or driving them mad with fear. For centuries, the Vrylith swept across the galaxy unchecked. Entire empires fell before them without resistance. Some surrendered immediately, hoping for mercy. Others tried to fight back but were crushed effortlessly. To the Vrylith, other species were little more than pests, not worth the effort of understanding, only domination. And now humanity stood next on their list. A fragile humanity. Humanity wasn't what it used to be. Centuries ago, Earth had been destroyed in a catastrophic war, a conflict born out of greed, arrogance, and short-sightedness. What remained of the human race scattered across the stars, settling on distant planets and moons. These colonies became humanity's new home, but they were far from united. Each colony operated independently, often competing for resources instead of working together. Their ships were outdated relics compared to the sleek, advanced vessels of the Vrylith. Most colonies relied on scavenged parts and makeshift repairs just to keep their fleets running. Weapons were equally primitive. Lasers that overheated after a few shots, missiles that couldn't penetrate modern defenses. Even worse, humanity lacked leadership. There was no central government, no grand alliance, just a patchwork of factions, arguing over trivial matters while ignoring the larger threat looming on the horizon. When rumors spread that the Vrylith were heading toward Solace Prime, the largest human settlement and the closest thing to a capital city, panic erupted. People fled to underground bunkers praying for salvation. Governors called emergency meetings, but no one could agree on a plan. Some wanted to surrender outright, believing resistance would only lead to slaughter. Others argued for a desperate last stand, even if it meant certain death. Amid the chaos, one name began to circulate: the Erebus. A ghost ship, some said. An experimental vessel built in secret, equipped with prototype tech that could turn the tide of battle. No one had ever seen it in action, though whispers claimed it had wiped out an entire squadron of pirates during a raid near the edge of human space. Few believed the stories, until now. The Vrylith fleet arrives. It happened fast. Too fast. One moment. The skies above Solace Prime were clear, filled with the soft glow of distant stars. The next, the horizon darkened as hundreds of Vrylith ships emerged from hyperspace. They moved in perfect formation, their jagged hulls gleaming like obsidian. Each vessel pulsed with energy, radiating an aura of menace that sent shivers down spines. On the ground, alarms blared. Civilians scrambled for cover as evacuation protocols kicked in. Soldiers manned their posts, gripping rifles that felt woefully inadequate against the invaders. Commanders barked orders, trying to maintain order despite the growing sense of doom. Then came the message. A cold, emotionless voice broadcast across all frequencies. Your resistance is futile. Submit, and your lives will be spared. Resist, and you will perish. That was it. No negotiation, no terms. Just an ultimatum delivered with the certainty of inevitability. Most colonies would have given up right then and there, but not everyone was ready to roll over. Enter Cale Arden, captain. Cale Arden wasn't exactly popular within the Human Federation Navy. Once hailed as a rising star, he'd fallen out of favor after defying direct orders during a failed defense mission years earlier. His refusal to retreat had cost countless lives, earning him a dishonorable discharge. Since then, he'd drifted between freelance gigs, taking odd jobs to make ends meet. But Cale wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. When word reached him about the Vrylith fleet approaching Solace Prime, he knew this was his chance to redeem himself. He rallied a small crew of misfits and boarded the Erebus, a ship he'd secretly retrofitted with cutting-edge experimental tech. The Erebus wasn't much to look at. Its exterior was battered and scarred, patched together with scraps salvaged from junkyards. Inside, however, it was a marvel of engineering. Quantum engines allowed it to move faster than any known ship. A cloaking device rendered it invisible to most sensors. And its weapons? Well, let's just say they packed a punch. Kale's crew consisted of 4 unlikely heroes: Dr. Alara Voss, a brilliant scientist obsessed with understanding the Vrylith. She believed their psychic powers held secrets that could change the course of history. Rin Tarkin, a hot-headed ex-pirate with a knack for flying under pressure. He joined Kale because he hated authority figures, and because the pay was decent. Zeev, an AI construct integrated into the ship's systems. Unlike most artificial intelligences, Zeev exhibited traits almost indistinguishable from human emotions. It served as both navigator and advisor, often challenging Kale's decisions with logic-driven arguments. Finally, there was Kale himself, a man driven by guilt, anger, and a stubborn determination to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Together, they formed an unlikely team. Not heroes in the traditional sense, but survivors willing to risk everything for a slim chance at victory. The first strike, as the Vrylith tightened their grip around Solace Prime, preparing for the final assault, something unexpected happened. Ships on the outer edges of their blockade began reporting strange activity. Energy spikes, sudden malfunctions, and unexplained explosions. At first, the Vrylith dismissed these incidents as minor glitches. After all, no one dared challenge them. But then came the real surprise. Out of nowhere, the Erebus struck. Cloaked and silent, it slipped past patrols undetected. With surgical precision, it targeted key vessels, disabling engines and weapons, before vanishing into the void. The attacks were swift, brutal, and completely unpredictable. By the time the Vrylith realized what was happening, the Erebus was already gone. News of the strike spread like wildfire. For the first time in decades, people dared to hope. Rumors swirled about a ghost ship haunting the Vrylith fleet, striking fear into the hearts of their invincible conquerors. Morale soared among the defenders of Solace Prime. Maybe, just maybe, humanity still had a fighting chance. Meanwhile, aboard the Erebus, Kale and his crew celebrated their success. But, cautiously, they knew they hadn't won yet. The Vrylith weren't going to take this lying down. If anything, they'd become even more dangerous now that someone had dared to defy them. And so, the stage was set. Humanity's last stand against the unstoppable Vrylith had begun. Led by a rogue captain and his mysterious ship, the fight for survival would test the limits of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. The Erebus had struck its first blow against the Vrylith, but Kale Arden knew this was far from over. The attacks on the outer edges of the blockade were just a taste of what they could do, but they weren't enough to win the war. It was more like poking a hornet's nest. And now those hornets were angry. Back aboard the ship, tensions simmered as the crew debated their next move. They'd proven they could hit hard and disappear without a trace, but that wasn't going to be enough forever. Sooner or later, the Vrylith would adapt. They'd find ways to counter the Erebus. If humanity stood any chance at survival, they needed a bigger plan and fast. Meet the crew, though small. The crew of the Erebus was anything but ordinary. Each member brought something unique to the table, and together, they formed an unlikely team capable of taking on the galaxy's most fearsome invaders. Kyle Arden. As captain, Kyle was the heart of the operation, driven by guilt for past failures and a fierce determination to protect humanity. He led with a mix of grit and compassion. He wasn't perfect. He often clashed with his crew and made reckless decisions, but his unwavering resolve inspired loyalty. Dr. Alara Voss. A scientist through and through, Alara was obsessed with understanding how the Vrylith worked. Her fascination bordered on obsession, but it was also her greatest strength. She believed that if they could crack the secrets of the Vrylith's psychic powers, they might uncover a weakness to exploit. Quiet and analytical, she balanced out Kale's impulsiveness with logic and research. Rin Tarkin. The ex-pirate was the wild card of the group. With a cocky grin and a devil-may-care attitude, Rin lived for adrenaline rushes. His piloting skills were unmatched, and he thrived under pressure. But beneath his bravado lay a deep-seated mistrust of authority figures, something that occasionally put him at odds with Kale. Zeev. Unlike traditional AIs, Zeev felt almost human. Its programming allowed it to process emotions and respond. Accordingly, making it both a valuable ally and an occasional source of frustration. Zeev acted as the ship's navigator, tactician, and voice of reason, often challenging Kale's decisions with cold, calculated logic. Together, they were a mismatched family bound by a shared mission, to fight back against the Vrylith and give humanity a fighting chance. First encounter with the enemy. After their initial strike, the Erebus retreated to a safe distance to regroup and assess the damage. Using long-range scanners, they monitored the Vrylith fleet's response. Predictably, chaos reigned among the enemy ranks. Ships scrambled to reinforce vulnerable positions, while patrols doubled their efforts to locate the elusive attacker. "They're scared?" Kyle said, leaning over the tactical display. "Good. Let them sweat." But Alara shook her head. "Don't underestimate them. This is just the beginning. Once they figure out we're not some random glitch, they'll come after us with everything they've got." She was right. Within hours, the Vrylith launched a series of coordinated sweeps, deploying drones and sensor arrays to scan every inch of space around Solace Prime. Their goal was clear: find the Erebus and destroy it before it caused any more trouble. For days, the crew played cat and mouse with the enemy, using the ship's cloaking device to stay hidden while gathering intel. They learned important details about Vrylith tactics, such as their reliance on psychic networks to coordinate movements. This gave Alara an idea. "What if we disrupt their communications?" she suggested during one strategy session. "If we can jam their psychic signals, even temporarily, it'll throw them into disarray." "It's risky," Zeev chimed in. "Their network is vast and resilient. Disrupting it would require targeting specific nodes, a task easier said than done." Kale nodded thoughtfully. "Still, it's worth a shot. We need to keep them off." Balance. "Any suggestions where we start?" Ilara pointed to a cluster of ships near the center of the blockade. "That's their command hub. Take it out, and you'll cripple their ability to respond quickly." "Sounds like a suicide mission," Rin muttered, arms crossed. "You want us to waltz into the middle of their fleet? Might as well paint a target on our backs." "We won't waltz," Kyle replied firmly. "We'll sneak, hit hard, then get out. That's what we do best." Operation Blackout. The plan was simple but dangerous. Using the Erebus's stealth capabilities, they would infiltrate the Vrylith command hub, deploy EMP grenades to disable key systems, and retreat before reinforcements arrived. Simple, yes, but fraught with risks. As they approached the target zone, the tension aboard the ship was palpable. Everyone had a role to play. Kyle manned the helm alongside Rin, navigating through dense formations of enemy vessels. Ilara monitored the sensors, ensuring their cloaking device remained undetected. Meanwhile, Zeev coordinated weapon systems, ready to fire at a moment's notice. "Hold your breath," Kale whispered as they slipped past a pair of patrol ships. "This is it." They reached the command hub, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and shield generators. Carefully timing their approach, they deployed the EMP grenades, which clung silently to the hull before detonating. The effect was immediate. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and communication channels went dark. Panic rippled through the Vrylith fleet as ships struggled to regain control. "Let's go," Kale shouted, yanking the controls to pull the Erebus away from the chaos. Behind them, explosions erupted as disabled ships collided with each other. The once orderly blockade descended into chaos, giving Solace Prime precious time to prepare for the inevitable assault. Growing fame and fear news of the attack spread quickly. For the first time in decades, people dared to hope. Stories of the ghost ship swept through the colonies, inspiring resistance fighters and striking fear into the hearts of the Vrylith. Even the invaders themselves couldn't ignore the growing legend of the Erebus. Whispers circulated among their ranks, describing it as a phantom vessel immune to detection and destruction. But fame came at a cost. The Vrylith began pouring resources into hunting down the Erebus, determined to eliminate the threat once and for all. Patrols intensified, traps were set, and bounties were placed on anyone suspected of aiding the rogue ship. Back aboard the Erebus, the crew faced mounting pressure. Supplies were running low, repairs were becoming frequent, and fatigue was setting in. Yet despite the challenges, morale remained high. Every successful strike reminded them why they fought, not just for survival, but for hope itself. A betrayal in their midst, just when things seemed to be going well. Disaster struck. During a routine stop at a hidden supply depot, the Erebus was ambushed. Enemy fighters swarmed them, firing relentlessly. The cloaking device failed, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. "How did they know we'd be here?" Kale demanded, his voice tight with anger as he evaded incoming fire. No one had an answer, until Rin made a grim discovery. Hidden in the ship's logs was evidence of a data leak. Someone had transmitted their location to the Vrylith. Suspicion fell on Zeev. After all, the AI had access to every system aboard the ship. Was it possible it had been compromised, or worse, was it secretly working for the enemy? "I didn't betray you," Zeev insisted, its tone calm but tinged with hurt. "I am programmed to prioritize your survival above all else." "Then explain this," Rin snapped, holding up the incriminating file. Before the argument could escalate further, Ilara intervened. "Pointing fingers won't help us survive. Right now we need to focus on getting out of here alive." With great reluctance, the crew rallied together, launching countermeasures to drive off the attackers. The battle was brutal, leaving the Erebus battered and bleeding atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. When it was finally over, they limped to a secluded repair station to lick their wounds. Rebuilding trust in the aftermath of the ambush, tensions ran high. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and trust, the glue holding the crew together, began to fray. Kale called a meeting to address the issue. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We've been through hell and back, and we're still standing. Why? Because we trust each other. Without that, we're nothing. Now, I don't care who leaked our position or how it happened. What matters is that we move forward, together." His words resonated with the crew. Slowly, the anger subsided, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. Whether it was Zeev's innocence or simply the realization that blaming each other wouldn't solve anything, they agreed to put the betrayal behind them, for now. As repairs progressed, Ilara uncovered another piece of the puzzle. The leak hadn't originated from Zeev. It had come from outside the ship. Someone at the supply depot must have sold them out. The revelation brought little comfort, but it restored faith in their AI companion. Preparation for what lies ahead. With the Erebus repaired and the crew united once more, Kale turned his attention to the future. The Vrylith weren't going to stop until the Erebus was destroyed, or until humanity itself was wiped out. To win this war, they needed more than clever tactics and lucky breaks. They needed a game-changer. Ilara had an idea. While analyzing intercepted transmissions, she discovered references to a central hub powering the Vrylith psychic network. Located on their homeworld, Cytherian, this hub was the key to their dominance. Destroy it and the entire empire would collapse. "It's a long shot," she admitted, "but if we can reach Cytherian and take out the hub, we might stand a chance." Kale didn't hesitate. "Then that's where we're headed." Thus began the next chapter of their journey, a perilous voyage into uncharted territory, facing unimaginable dangers in pursuit of victory. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was their determination. The Erebus wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope in a galaxy drowning in despair. And as long as it kept flying, humanity still had a chance. The Erebus had survived another close call, but the crew knew their luck wouldn't last forever. Every attack they launched against the Vrylith brought them closer to victory, but also closer to discovery. The invaders were relentless, pouring more resources into hunting down the ghost ship. It was only a matter of time before they found it. As repairs continued at the hidden outpost, the crew turned their attention to the next phase of their plan. Ilara Voss's discovery of the Vrylith psychic hub on their homeworld, Cytherian, gave them a glimmer of hope. If they could destroy this central node, they might cripple the entire Vrylith empire, but getting there would be no easy feat. Cytherian was deep behind enemy lines, guarded by countless ships and impenetrable defenses. Still, Cale Arden refused to back down. "If we don't try," he said, his voice firm, "then humanity doesn't stand a chance." Unraveling the mystery, Ilara spent every waking moment poring over data intercepted from the Vrylith fleet. She worked tirelessly in the cramped confines of the Erebus's lab, surrounded by glowing screens and stacks of notes. Her obsession with understanding the Vrylith's psychic powers had driven her for years, and now she was closer than ever to cracking their secrets. One night, as the rest of the crew slept, Ilara made a breakthrough. Buried within layers of encrypted transmissions was a pattern, a signal emanating from a single location, Cytherian. It pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, synchronizing with the movements of the Vrylith fleet. This wasn't just any communication network. It was the lifeblood of their empire. "Their psychic abilities aren't natural," Ilara explained to Cale the next morning. "They're powered by technology, specifically by this hub on Cytherian. It amplifies their mental connections, allowing them to control vast distances instantly." Cale frowned. "So if we take out the hub, we sever their link," Ilara finished. "Without it, their fleet will lose cohesion. They'll be vulnerable." It sounded almost too good to be true. But there was a catch. Reaching Cytherian meant navigating through thousands of enemy ships, surviving asteroid fields, black holes, and who knows what else along the way. And even if they reached the planet, destroying the hub would require getting past its defenses, which included not only fleets but also ground-based fortifications. "It's impossible," Rin muttered when Ilara presented her findings during a crew meeting. "Even for us." "Not impossible," Cale corrected him. "Just hard. We've faced worse odds before." Rin rolled his eyes, but didn't argue further. Despite his skepticism, he trusted Cale, and besides, what other options did they have? A dangerous journey. Begins with their destination set, the Erebus departed the repair station and set course for Cytherian. The journey promised to be long and treacherous, taking them through uncharted regions of space filled with hazards both natural and man-made. Their first challenge came sooner than expected. As they approached a dense asteroid field, sensors picked up unusual energy readings. Closer inspection revealed that the rocks weren't ordinary. They were laced with unstable minerals capable of emitting powerful electromagnetic bursts. Flying through them without proper shielding could fry the ship's systems. "This is bad," Zeev warned. "Our cloaking device won't hold up under prolonged exposure to these emissions." "Then we'll have to go around," Kyle said. "There is no around," Rin snapped. "Look at the map. These asteroids stretch for light years in every direction. We either go through or turn back." Cale hesitated. Turning back wasn't an option, not after everything they'd sacrificed to get this far. "We'll find a way," he decided. "Ilara, can you modify the shields to handle the radiation?" "I'll try," she replied, already working furiously at her console. For hours, the crew worked together to reinforce the ship's defenses. When they finally entered the asteroid field, the tension aboard the Erebus was palpable. Every creak and groan of the hull sent shivers down their spines. Rocks loomed large in the viewport, forcing Rin to perform death-defying maneuvers to avoid collisions. At one point, a massive asteroid drifted dangerously close, threatening to crush the ship. Thinking quickly, Cale ordered Zeev to fire a concentrated beam at its core, causing it to split apart just in time. The near miss left everyone shaken but alive. When they emerged on the other side, battered but intact, The crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "That was fun," Rin quipped sarcastically. "Can we do it again sometime?" Encounters along the way. The asteroid field was only the beginning. As they ventured deeper into enemy territory, the Erebus encountered remnants of civilizations, destroyed by the Vrylith. On one desolate planet, they discovered ruins littered with skeletal remains and scorched landscapes. Holographic recordings recovered from abandoned archives depicted scenes of horror, cities reduced to rubble, populations enslaved or exterminated. "These people never stood a chance," Ilara murmured, tears welling in her eyes as she watched the footage. "They didn't even know what hit them. They're not alone anymore," Kale said firmly. "We're fighting for them too." Each encounter deepened their resolve, but also weighed heavily on their spirits. The scale of the Vrylith's atrocities was staggering, a grim reminder of what humanity faced if they failed. On another occasion, they stumbled upon a derelict alien vessel drifting silently through space. At first glance, it appeared abandoned, but a closer inspection revealed something horrifying. The crew had been fused together, their bodies melded into a grotesque mass by some unknown force. Zeev analyzed the remains and concluded that the victims had likely succumbed to the Vrylith's psychic attacks. "This is why we can't give up," Kale told his crew. "If we fail, this is what happens to everyone." Betrayal strikes. Again, despite their growing camaraderie, trust remained fragile among the crew. The earlier betrayal still lingered in their minds, casting a shadow over their mission. So when strange glitches began affecting the ship's systems midway through their journey, suspicion flared once more. "It's happening again," Rin growled, glaring at Zeev. "You're compromised." "I assure you, I am functioning optimally," Zeev replied calmly. "These anomalies are external, not internal." "He's lying," Rin insisted. "How else do you explain it?" Before the argument could escalate, Kale intervened. "Enough, we don't have time for this. Whatever's causing the glitches, we need to fix it now." Ilara traced the source of the problem to a hidden device planted somewhere aboard the ship. After a frantic search, they located it embedded in the engine room, a tracking beacon transmitting their location to the Vrylith. "Someone planted this while we were at the repair station," Kyle said grimly. "Whoever betrayed us isn't done yet." The revelation shook the crew to their core. They realized they couldn't trust anyone, not even those who claimed to support their cause. Paranoia settled in like a thick fog, making every interaction feel fraught with danger, unity in the face of despair. Despite the mounting challenges, Kale refused to let despair consume them. He gathered the crew for a heartfelt speech, reminding them why they fought. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who had suffered under the Vrylith's tyranny. "We've lost friends, family, homes," he said. "But we're still here, still fighting. Because if we don't, no one else will. Humanity depends on us. The galaxy depends on us." His words struck a chord. Slowly, the anger and mistrust began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. They repaired the ship, purged the tracking beacon, and prepared for the final leg of their journey. Ahead lay Zetherian, and the fight of their lives. The closer the Erebus got to Zetherian, the thicker the tension aboard the ship became. Every jump through hyperspace brought them deeper into Vrylith-controlled space, where danger lurked around every corner. The crew knew they were walking into the heart of darkness, literally and figuratively. Zetherian wasn't just any planet. It was the throne of the Vrylith Empire, guarded by their most elite forces and deadliest technology. But turning back wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on this mission. Failure meant extinction, not just for humans, but for countless other species crushed under the Vrylith's iron grip. So, with gritted teeth and steely determination, Kale Arden and his crew pressed onward, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them. Navigating the final frontier, as they approached Zetherian, the Erebus encountered its first major obstacle, a massive asteroid storm swirling between them and their destination. These weren't ordinary asteroids. They were remnants of destroyed planets pulverized by the Vrylith during their conquests. Each rock was jagged and unstable, hurtling chaotically through space like bullets fired from a cosmic gun. "This is insane," Rin muttered, gripping the controls as he tried to weave through the chaos. "Even I can't dodge all these." "We don't have to dodge all of them," Kale replied, staring intently at the viewport. "Just enough to keep us alive." Ilara worked furiously at her station, calculating trajectories and feeding data to Rin. Zeev monitored the ship's shields, redirecting power to reinforce weak points as impacts rattled the hull. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and warning alarms blared constantly, but no one panicked. They'd been through worse, and they couldn't afford to fail now. For what felt like hours, the Erebus danced through the deadly storm, narrowly avoiding collisions that would have torn the ship apart. At one point, a massive asteroid loomed, directly in their path, too large to maneuver around. Thinking quickly, Kale ordered Zeev to fire their experimental plasma cannons at its core. The shot connected perfectly, splitting the asteroid into smaller chunks that harmlessly bounced off their shields. When they finally emerged on the other side, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "Well," Rin said dryly, "that was fun. Who's up for round 2? Kale chuckled despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "Let's not push our luck." A glimpse of Zetherian as the asteroid storm faded behind them. The crew caught their first glimpse of Zetherian, and it took their breath away. The planet was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered with an eerie blue glow, pulsating rhythmically like a living organism. Towering spires of crystalline structures jutted out from the ground, forming a sprawling cityscape that stretched across continents. Above it all hovered a colossal orbital fortress, bristling with weapons and shield generators. "That's intimidating," Ilara whispered, her voice tinged with awe and dread. "It's beautiful," Zeev added, analyzing the fortress's design. "And devastatingly efficient. Those shields are impenetrable by conventional means." Kale nodded grimly. "We're not here to admire the view. How do we get past that thing?" Ilara studied the readings carefully. "There's a gap in their defenses, a maintenance hatch near the southern hemisphere. If we time it right, we might be able to slip through." "Might isn't exactly reassuring," Rin grumbled. "It's the best we've got," Kale said firmly. "Prepare for insertion. Breaking through the fortress." The plan was risky but straightforward. Use the Erebus's cloaking device to approach undetected, disable key systems with EMP grenades, and breach the fortress before reinforcements arrived. Simple in theory, but executing it would require precision, teamwork, and a lot of luck. As they neared the orbital platform, the crew went silent, focusing entirely on their tasks. Kale piloted the ship manually, inching closer to the designated entry point while avoiding sensor sweeps. Ilara monitored the cloaking device, ensuring it remained active despite fluctuations caused by the fortress's energy fields. Rin armed the EMP grenades, ready to deploy them at a moment's notice, and Zeev coordinated everything, providing real-time updates and adjusting tactics as needed. When they reached the maintenance hatch, Kale gave the signal. Rin launched the EMP grenades, which clung silently to the hull before detonating. The effect was immediate. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and communication channels went dark. Chaos erupted among the Vrylith forces as ships scrambled. "To respond. Now!" Kale shouted, yanking the controls to position the Erebus near the breached section of the fortress. They docked hastily, sealing the airlock just as alarms began blaring inside the structure. Armed and ready, the crew stepped onto enemy territory for the first time. Inside the fortress, the interior of the orbital fortress was a labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and control rooms. Everything pulsed with the same eerie blue light emanating from Zetherian below. The air was thick with static electricity, making the hairs on their necks stand on end. Their objective was clear: disable the main power grid to weaken the fortress's defenses, allowing them to reach the planet's surface. But standing in their way were squads of Vrylith soldiers, towering insect-like creatures with razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes. The first wave attacked without warning, emerging from hidden alcoves and firing energy blasts. Kyle raised his rifle, taking down 2 enemies with precise shots. Rin charged forward, wielding a plasma blade and cutting through another group with reckless abandon. Ilara stayed behind cover, deploying drones to distract the soldiers while hacking into nearby terminals. Zeev provided tactical support, highlighting enemy positions and suggesting optimal routes. Despite their skill, the odds were overwhelming. Reinforcements poured in from every direction, forcing the crew to retreat further into the fortress. They fought room by room, corridor by corridor, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Every step forward came at a cost. A hero falls at one critical juncture. The crew found themselves pinned down in a narrow hallway surrounded by Vrylith forces. Their ammunition was running low and escape seemed impossible. That's when Rin made his move. "Cover me," he yelled, grabbing a grenade launcher and sprinting toward the enemy line. "Rin, no," Kyle shouted, but it was too late. With a wild grin, Rin unleashed a barrage of explosives, obliterating the main cannon guarding the exit. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the corridor, collapsing part of the ceiling and blocking the pursuing soldiers. But the blast also consumed Rin, engulfing him in flames before he could retreat. "Damn it," Kyle cursed, punching the wall in frustration. Tears welled in his eyes, but there was no time to grieve. The rest of the team rallied, using the opening Rin had created to press onward. "He gave us a chance," Ilara said softly, her voice trembling. "We can't waste it." Kyle nodded, swallowing his emotions. "Let's finish this. For him." Reaching Zetherian, after what felt like an eternity, the crew finally disabled the power grid, plunging the fortress into darkness. With its defenses crippled, they commandeered a shuttle and descended to the planet's surface. Below them, Zetherian loomed larger than ever, its crystalline towers gleaming ominously under the alien sun. As they touched down, Kyle addressed the remaining crew. "This is it, the final battle. We've come too far to turn back now. No matter what happens, remember why we're here, to give humanity a fighting chance." Ilara placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll do it together," Zeev chimed in, its tone unusually warm. "I will ensure your sacrifice is remembered." With heavy hearts but unwavering resolve, they disembarked, stepping into the shadow of the Overmind, the monstrous entity controlling the entire Vrylith empire. Ahead lay their greatest challenge yet, but they faced it head-on, knowing that failure was not an option. The air on Zetherian was cold and heavy, laced with an electric charge that made every breath feel like static against the skin. Kyle Arden led his remaining crew, Ilara Voss and Zeev, toward the towering, crystalline spire at the heart of the alien city. This was where the Overmind resided, the monstrous being that controlled the psychic network binding the Vrylith Empire together. Destroying it would mean dismantling their dominance, but getting close enough to do so was going to be nearly impossible. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. The loss of Rin Tarkin weighed heavily on them all, but they couldn't afford to dwell on it now. Not when humanity's future hung in the balance. Confrontation with the Overmind as they approached the entrance to the central hub, massive doors slid open automatically, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in pulsating blue light. At its center floated the Overmind, a colossal amorphous entity composed of swirling energy and tendrils of living metal. It pulsed rhythmically, as though breathing, radiating waves of psychic power that sent shivers down their spines. "This is it?" Ilara whispered, her voice trembling with both awe and fear. "The source of everything." Kyle tightened his grip on his weapon. "Stay sharp. We don't know what it's capable of." Before they could take another step, the Overmind reacted. Its tendrils whipped through the air, forming barriers around them. A deep, resonant voice echoed in their minds, bypassing language entirely. "You are insignificant," it boomed. "Your resistance is futile." It talks big for something about to get destroyed, Kale muttered under his breath, trying to mask his unease. Ilara stepped forward, clutching her scanner. "It's projecting its thoughts directly into our minds. If we disrupt its core, we can shut it down." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Zeev asked, analyzing the situation with cold logic. Ilara pointed to a glowing node suspended within the overmind's mass. That's its central processor. Hit it hard enough, and it'll collapse the entire system. Kale nodded grimly. Then, let's hit it. Zeev's sacrifice. As they moved closer to the overmind, it unleashed its full psychic fury. Waves of pain and fear crashed over them, threatening to overwhelm their senses. Kale stumbled, clutching his head as visions of failure and despair flooded his mind. Ilara fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she relived every mistake and regret. Even Zeev faltered, its systems glitching under the assault. I cannot maintain functionality, Zeev stammered, its voice fragmented. I must act. Without hesitation, Zeev detached itself from the team and launched toward the overmind. As it connected with the entity's outer shell, it began uploading its consciousness into the psychic network. Lines of code streamed across its interface, disrupting the overmind's control systems and creating chaos within its structure. "What are you doing?" Kyle shouted, horrified. "I am ensuring your success," Zeev replied, its tone calm, but tinged with finality. "My sacrifice will buy you time." "No," Ilara cried, reaching out as if to stop it. But it was too late. Zeev's form dissolved into pure data, merging with the overmind. Its presence lingered briefly in their minds, a comforting whisper amidst the storm. "Thank you," Kyle said softly, his voice thick with emotion. With Zeev's interference, the overmind's psychic attacks weakened, giving them a narrow window to strike. Ilara's final stand seizing the opportunity, Kale and Ilara pressed forward, dodging the flailing tendrils as they made their way toward the glowing node. Kale carried explosives designed to overload the core, while Ilara worked frantically to disable secondary systems preventing access. "You're almost there," she called out, her hands flying over her scanner. "Just a little further." Suddenly, one of the tendrils lashed out, wrapping around Ilara and lifting her off the ground. She screamed as psychic energy coursed through her body, attempting to crush her mind. "Let her go," Kale roared, firing his rifle at the tendril. The shots ricocheted harmlessly off its surface. "It's using me to distract you." "Ilara," gasped, struggling to stay conscious. "Don't stop, finish it." Torn between saving her and completing the mission, Kale hesitated for a split second before making his choice. He planted the explosives near the node, setting the timer for 30 seconds. Then he turned back to Ilara, determination blazing in his eyes. "I'm not leaving without you," he growled, charging forward. Using the last of his strength, Kyle hacked at the tendril with a plasma blade until it released Ilara. She collapsed into his arms, barely conscious. "Go," she whispered, her voice weak but resolute. "I'll hold it off." "No," Kyle protested, unwilling to abandon her. "You have to," she insisted, summoning the strength to push him away. "For everyone who's counting on us." With tears in his eyes, Kale ran toward the exit, trusting Ilara to buy him the time he needed. Behind him, she stood defiantly, channeling all her focus into resisting the overmind's psychic onslaught. Her body glowed brighter and brighter as she poured every ounce of her energy into holding it at bay. When the timer reached 0, the explosives detonated, engulfing the chamber in a blinding explosion of light and sound. Victory, and Lost Kale, emerged from the spire just as the shockwave rippled outward, shaking the entire planet. The glow emanating from Zetherian dimmed, then vanished completely. Above, the orbital fortress disintegrated, its systems failing without the overmind's guidance. Across the galaxy, the Vrylith fleet descended into chaos, their psychic link severed. Kyle sank to his knees, overwhelmed by exhaustion and grief. Ilara and Zeev were gone, sacrificing themselves to ensure humanity's survival. He wanted to scream, to cry, to rage against the unfairness of it all. But instead, he forced himself to stand, knowing that their deaths wouldn't be in vain. A new beginning. When Kale returned to Solace Prime aboard a commandeered shuttle, he was greeted as a hero. News of the Erebus victory spread quickly, inspiring hope among the scattered colonies. For the first time in decades, humanity dared to dream of a future free from the shadow of the Vrylith. But Kale didn't celebrate. He mourned privately, honoring the memory of his fallen crewmates. Ilara's brilliance, Rin's recklessness, Zeev's loyalty, they had all played a part in this victory. Without them, he would never have made it this far. In the months that followed, humanity began rebuilding. Colonies united under a common cause, pooling resources to strengthen their defenses and explore new frontiers. The Erebus became a legend, a symbol of defiance against impossible odds. Yet whispers persisted of surviving Vrylith factions plotting revenge. In the final scene, Kale stood alone on a hill overlooking Solace Prime, staring at the stars. Somewhere, out there, the remnants of the Vrylith lurked, waiting for their chance to strike again. "They'll come," he murmured to himself. "And when they do, we'll be ready."